Silence! The time draws near for the...
Mail, check out what you got now. Get your postcards, birthday cards, eBay on slot cards. I get it while it's hot now. If a letter makes you wetter, then it better, ready, better, it's mail.
Yes, the mail.
Hey everybody, it is your old buddy Mike. Happy New Year. Hope everybody is doing well. I am just dropping in here in your podcast feed, not with a normal episode. We're still on a little bit of a hiatus, trying to recover from the holiday festivities and all of the craziness that is going on in 2026 that we're not going to mention right now. And I'm just dropping in to do a feedback episode. I'm always asking you guys to rate, review the podcast, to share the podcast, and there are some of you out there that do that all the time, and I want to thank you very, very much. For those who don't, shame on you. I am virtually slapping your hands right now. But if you could, please rate, review the podcast. Give it a review on Apple. You can give it a 1-star review. That's fine, as long as it helps the algorithm. Comment. I would love to hear comments on some of the episodes and some of the future episodes also. And what I'm going to do with this episode is read some of the comments that I've gotten from my listeners over the last couple of months, almost a year now, that the show has been on. When we first started, we read a couple, and for certain individual episodes, I have read some of the comments, but I want to read the accumulated comments that I have and give people a reason to write in, to communicate, and to engage with the podcast, because I want to have a dialogue with the listeners, and I want to try to gain more listeners. So, I'm sure you're going to all be excited to hear your names called out on this podcast. All the tens of listeners are going to get to hear who has written into the podcast. So, yeah, this is kind of a mini episode before we start season 3 of Pop Culture Basement. So, yeah, like I said, I do want to read some of the comments that I've gotten from some of my listeners, and I appreciate all the listeners, those who do write in and those who do engage on social media, and those who don't. I really appreciate anyone who is listening. I do this for fun and for a hobby, and I guess part of me does like the attention that I get. I mean, you wouldn't do a podcast or something like this if you didn't. So I appreciate, and I like to know that there are people out there listening, and I'm not just talking into the void. So without further ado, I am going to read some of the comments that we have gotten here at the Pop Culture Basement over the last year. So first off with the comments, this comes from Bluesky, and this is from Sarah Eddy. Sarah, how are you? And Sarah is hopefully going to be on an episode this season. We are working that out, so I'm hoping to have her on the podcast this season. But this is regarding the episode that I did with my daughter, the special episode about our shared love of reading. And Sarah wrote in on Bluesky and said, "Your daughter made me smile on a dank, dreary Wednesday. There's been quite a bit in the news about there being a reading crisis in the UK among children and adults, so it's fantastic listening to book lovers, even when they're on the other side of the ocean." Sarah, thank you. And that episode was really fun to do, not just because it was with my daughter, but I'm just happy that I can share my love of reading, not only with her, but with the listeners. So that was a really fun episode to do. We got another comment from Tinfoil Consortium, who has been on the podcast a couple of times this season and will be on in the future. He also commented on the same episode and said, "Listening to the most recent Pop Culture Basement, talk about the apple not falling far from the tree." And then he added, there was a single phrase, "Sorry, he's watching Buffy with me. That kid has a future in this." Tinfoil, you are correct. I think that my daughter will be eventually. I keep telling her, go into the arts. She is a dancer. I can see her being a dancer, being an actress. She has boundless enthusiasm and boundless personality. I think anybody who listened to the episode that she was on with me can tell that she is not shy. She is the total opposite of her mom and dad. Bill Pauly on Twitter Hi, Bill. He also commented on the same episode and said, another great episode. Your daughter did a great job. I was never a reader, thankful for audiobooks. But she is right. The books are always better than the movies. Keep up the good work, Mike. Bill, thank you very much. Thank you for listening. And I hope to have you on eventually also. This is a comment that I got on our Star Wars prequels episode, our first episode. So this goes back all the way to the very beginning of the podcast. And this I got on Spotify. You can comment on our Spotify feed or on our Spotify site. And this was from Mark. And I think I'm always saying your last name wrong, Mark. And believe me, I understand because everybody says my last name wrong. So I think it's Mark Dormier. I hope I'm saying that right, Mark. When I have you on, because he's another listener who has reached out and says that he wants to be on the show, and we are going to get him on the show. So he commented and said, I'm a year older than you, Mike, and I distinctly remember seeing Empire in the theaters, and that moment, all in caps, I think we all know the moment he's talking about. I had seen A New Hope in bits and pieces at the library since it was always playing on VHS when we were there. I showed the movie to my kids in release order starting when they were 4. Luckily, we were all able to see the sequels together in the theaters. Yeah, that was getting to see the Star Wars, The Rise of Skywalker in the theaters with both of my kids, and now getting to see movies. At the time of this recording, just last night, I saw The Fellowship of the Ring with my son, the re-release in theaters. Seeing the classic movies that you love in theaters with your loved ones, especially for me, my son and my daughter, is an experience that I will always hold dear to my heart because I love sharing the things that I love with them and hopefully embedding in them the love of those things also. I also had, I think this is from Bill Dunn, for the Star Wars prequels episode. Great discussion of the prequels. Can't wait to hear more. Bill, you have heard more and you've been on the show, so you've heard yourself. So I hope you have liked everything you've heard since that very first episode. Our next comment is from... This is regarding the Batman episode that I did with Big Beard Booty Daddy, who will also be on again in the very near future. We got a comment from General Zod 80. And this was actually on YouTube. And again, the YouTube feed, it's not video, it's just the podcast, but it's on YouTube. I know people are so disappointed that they can't get to see me or anybody else on YouTube. But so we did get a comment on YouTube, and General Zod 80 said, Batman, I saw at the Westbury Drive-In. Drive-ins are unfortunately a thing of the past. And then General Zod 80 also said, congrats to my friend Brad Ryder on his podcast debut. So there you go, Brad. General Zod 80 was looking out for you, and hopefully he became a regular listener. I almost said viewer, but you can't say anything on YouTube. And thank you, General Zod, and please don't make me kneel for you. The Big Trouble in Little China episode that I did with Bill Beer, and he is also going to be on the show, and I appreciate Bill for having my trailer on his Bat Pod podcast. Go out there if you're a Batman fan or if you just like good podcasts. Listen to the Bat Pod that Bill hosts with J. David Whiter. Or is it Weeder? I'm probably saying that wrong too. Me and last names, it's terrible. Now, I think it's karma. I'm getting karma for saying last names wrong. That's why people keep saying my last name wrong. But when we did the Big Trouble in Little China episode and we got a comment, this was also on YouTube, from David Lopan himself. It said, magic, the darkest magic. So thank you, David, and please don't take my daughter or my wife and try to marry them. We got a comment on Apple. And like I keep telling people, please go on Apple or Spotify and shoot us a comment from Disciple of Rollins. It said, great podcast. And it says, this podcast is a fun and nostalgic look back at the weird and interesting things we grew up on. Mike is a great host. I agree. And I look forward to more. So thank you, Disciple of Rollins. And I also got one from Mr. Bill in Florida that said, time to relive your youth. This is going to be a good podcast to remind us of our youth. Well, if you're Gen X, give this one a listen. I agree. Thank you, Mr. Bill in Florida. We also got comments on Apple from Wes's Toaster that says, such a fun show, always excited for new episodes. I hope he still is. And from Transplant Rockstar, who will also be on the show hopefully very, very soon. He said, love the topics and the thought and fun that go into each episode. Have fun. You'll definitely enjoy. Thank you, Transplant. And again, I hope that you're going to be a guest this upcoming season. Bill Dunn on Twitter for our Doctor Who episode. I had read comments and I had forgotten to read Bill's comment, and I'd asked about favorite doctors and favorite companions, and Bill said, Mike, I'll send you a whole synopsis about Doctor Who, but I love the Capaldi era, even Missy, and the Baker era, plus 2 companions of the modern doctors. And he sent me a picture of Clara and of Amy. So, Bill, I can't argue with your choices. I think this was on Bluesky. It was on Bluesky. We got a comment from Acid Keg Comics. This was from the episode that I did with Michael Lyons that we did about Pinocchio in outer space. And Acid Keg Comics had this to say. He said, fun episode. You guys did take me back to the days of UHF weekend watching. It's too bad the film got dinged by critics like Michael Medved, but Mr. Golden Turkey Awards never did understand fun. Showed it to the wife tonight and she had fun. Bonus points for including the Rankin Bass show theme. Thank you, Acid Keg. We did have another comment from Sarah Eddy on Bluesky about Pinocchio in outer space, and she said, can confirm Figaro and Cleo are not in the original book, because I had asked if Figaro and Cleo were Disney creations or if they were in the original book. So she says they are not in the original book, which is even more nightmare fuel than the Disney film. I have never seen or even heard of Pinocchio in outer space, but for some reason, Nerdle the Turtle is buried in my brain somewhere. P.S. Michael Lyons, I love the Disorder podcast. Yes, Disorder podcast, which unfortunately has come to an end. Great podcast. You have a lot of good stuff waiting for you if you want to go back and listen, if you're a Disney fan, or again, even if you're not, if you're just a fan of good podcasts. But Michael Lyons does that with Andy DiGenova, and it's a great podcast. So yes, I am a fan of the Disorder podcast too, and also with Hunter Fagan. I don't want to leave him out. Also, we had a comment again on Spotify from Mark. Mark, I'm saying your last name wrong. Domier. I probably said it different from the last time I said it. This was on the 1989 the sequel episode that I did with Tinfoil Consortium, and he said, my wife-to-be and I watched Better Off Dead on our first date. She thought it was funny, which was a good sign. I think he was talking about my Sleazebag Cinema podcast that I also do with Andrew Gross, and we did an episode on Better Off Dead. Also said the new version of Quantum Leap was entertaining and made plenty of reference to Sam. Razor's Edge is one of my all-time favorite albums, the AC/DC album. Thunderstruck will never get old. Yes, I think people of a certain age will agree with you there, Mark. Mark also chimed in on the John Williams, The Soundtrack of Our Lives episode that I did with my wife's cousin. It says, my wife and I did use the throne room as we left the church. As a Catholic, I confess to a sin of omission. When we told the priest our music selections, we just told him the recessional was classical music by a famous composer. We used a CD, and everyone in the crowd recognized it immediately as Star Wars. Mark, if you go to confession and do 3 Hail Marys and 2 Our Fathers, you'll be fine. I think God and Jesus and whoever else will understand. So you're fine. Don't worry about it. Mark again on our the evolution of sports fandom that I did with Chief Smash Forever way back in the very beginning of the podcast. And Chief Smash, I have to have you on again. You can come on and we can both talk about our misery of a football season. But Mark said, us Minnesota sports fans to Philly fans complaining about lack of success. Hold my beer. Yeah, I mean, you kind of got me there, Mark. I'm not jealous of you being a Minnesota sports fan. For our John Candy episode that I did with Melissa Nicholson, we had Jeff2133 comment and just say Prism was the best, because during the episode I talked about watching a lot of John Candy's movies on Prism, the local Philadelphia cable channel that my aunt had, who lived 2 doors away from me. And that is a great episode. Melissa, of course, was on for our most recent episode, the Doctor Who episode that went for about 27 hours, and she will be on again. And I appreciate her coming on and talking so much with me for that Doctor Who episode and for the John Candy episode. It was a really fun episode. We had Nancy on Bluesky, and I'm not sure which episode this was for, but she said, new listener, great episode, but this must have been one with Tinfoil Consortium, because she said, new listener, great episode, but every time Anthony speaks, I hear the best show. My brain refuses to update. Can we get a photo before I start hallucinating Philly boy Roy? All right, so Tinfoil, you need to, when next time you're on, you need to explain this to me because I don't really I think this is an Indiana thing. But Nancy, thank you, and I hope you're still listening. For the Top 50 Rock Bands of All Time episode that I did with Tinfoil and with Bill Dunn, Jared Butts, who is going to be on an episode this season, he commented and said, Queen deserves to be no lower than number 3. Jared, when you come on the show, I will tell you why I disagree with that. But thank you for listening, and I look forward to our episode. It's going to be a fun one. Okay, so this was a response so Jared said, Queen deserves to be no lower than 3, and then he said, the Stones and Zeppelin are great, but all generations know We Will Rock You and or Bohemian Rhapsody. I did agree with him and say I agree with the sentiment that all generations do know that. And then we had Pat Croce, who is a friend that I grew up with in Southwest Philadelphia, commented and said, I guess I'm going to have to listen to what the criteria was for this list, as any list is subjective. That being said, I was disappointed to see The Cure and Oasis, but not the Smiths. I mean, from a pop culture perspective, they would need to be on a top 50 list, right? Also, what about Bob Marley and the Wailers? I could see a few slots I would have placed those two in, but again, subjective, so all good. Pat, I hope you're still listening. We need to talk and not just over Facebook because it's been far too long, and I appreciate you chiming in and engaging with the podcast. Mark again, and I'm not going to try to say your last name, Mark. I know when you come on the show, you need to tell me how to say your last name correctly. I will write it down, and I will have then an audio copy of what I'm supposed to say. But Mark, he commented on the Transformers episode that I did with Melody and said, my family never got brand name stuff, so I was stuck with GoBots. Still, the comics and cartoons were amazing. I agree, and you know what? Hey, GoBots, Transformers, back in the 80s, when you were a kid, they were all the same. Well, maybe not. I mean, I always knew when I was getting Hydrox and not Oreos, so maybe it's just my maturity. Also, commenting on the Transformers episode, we have Michael Bailey. Go just check out the Fortress of Baileytude. He has a million podcasts. They are all great. He is one of the podcasts that I first discovered when I started listening to podcasts, and he is a podcasting legend. I was very appreciative that he commented on one of my episodes, and he said, before a trip to Universal in 2023, I would have probably not been on board with this idea, but after riding the Transformers ride and hearing Peter Cullen tell me he was proud of me and the emotional reaction I had to that, well, I can't disagree. Michael, again, I want to thank you for commenting. And again, thank you for all the shows you've put out because you've been an inspiration for me and I'm sure a lot of podcasters out there. Sarah Eddy again commented. This was also for the Transformers episode, and she said, whichever live-action film Anthony Hopkins is in is utterly dreadful, but actually worth watching for his absolutely gonzo performance. I'm pretty sure I remember Carson from Downton Abbey voicing a robot, and he makes some deranged acting choices as well. Sarah, that must have been, I checked out after the first movie, so that must have been after the first movie. Commenting on our Christmas Eve on Sesame Street, Matt Spalding had this to say, my absolute favorite depiction of Santa's magic powers are in this special. He walks up on Big Bird, we only see his shadow, then by the time Big Bird has opened his eyes, only a few seconds later, Santa has gone in, done his work, and gone without even footprints left behind. Perfect. Thank you, Matt. Clinton Robinson also commented on the Christmas Eve on Sesame Street episode and said, this is by far and large the best version of Gift of the Magi. But let's top everything off with Bob is the only one who remembers that Mr. Hooper is Jewish and that Mr. Hooper still gives everyone Christmas gifts just because he wants to see all his friends happy. I'm not crying, you are. Clinton, I totally agree, and I'm holding back tears right now, and I thank you for commenting on the episode. We had Nancy who commented on the Christmas Eve on Sesame Street and said, this was fun, great work, short, succinct, to the point. Nancy, thank you very much. We had Paul Mitchell comment on our most recent episode, the Doctor Who, the two-part Doctor Who extravaganza, epic. And Paul said, being English, it was on TV regularly, have vivid memories of watching the Fifth Doctor, Peter Davison playing cricket and battling with Cybermen. Don't think in the same episode. Circa 1982, aged 4. Paul, thank you very much. And yeah, I mean, Peter Davison, I just have memories of him when I would flick on PBS and see either him or Tom Baker because it was the mid-80s and they were kind of showing the reruns of those eras. It might have been Davison's current era. And of course, now that I've gotten into Doctor Who, I have looked more into Peter Davison. So I think that's really cool that you have those memories from childhood. And thank you for listening and commenting. And that was the last comment that I had gotten. And again, I want to thank everyone who took the time to comment, and thank everyone, even if you didn't take the time to comment, for listening. Want to remind everybody, please, 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 if you could, leave a comment, a review, share the episodes. We have grown over the year that I've been doing this podcast, and I want to grow even more and get this out to people. So I would really, really appreciate it if you would go out there and comment on the episodes, share the episodes. It just helps with the algorithm. We are on Apple, we are on Spotify, we are on YouTube, we are on other podcast platforms that I don't even know about, but we are on there because when I look at the metrics, they show them. So the podcast is out there. And I do want to say that we will be coming out with Season 3 very, very soon. It should be by the end of January or the very beginning of February. I'm very excited because I'm going to have some returning guests, and I'm going to have some new guests that I'm excited to welcome down into the basement. Some it's going to be their first time on a podcast, and some are podcast veterans that I admire very, very much, and I am absolutely thrilled that they agreed to be on the show. I'm not going to announce them right now because I don't want to jinx anything, and with podcast scheduling and with my crazy life, and I say my crazy life, but it's just the life of a parent and the life of somebody who does this as a hobby. But with my crazy life, with trying to schedule stuff, I don't want to make promises that I can't keep. But I do want to say I'm very, very, very excited for the people I'm going to have on. I've even reached out to some people for holiday episodes that are 11 or 12 months down the line. But I wanted to get that in now so we can try to get the scheduling worked out. I do want to once again reiterate and repeat that I am very, very grateful for the people who have been listening to the show, who have been supporting the show, and I am very happy with the friendships, and especially the new friendships I've made over this past year that have come because of this podcast. And you know, when I started this, and I always want to give a shout out to Rob Kelly from the Fire and Water Podcast Network. His show Mashcast was the first podcast I was ever on, so that kind of got me addicted to podcasting. So I want to thank him all those years ago for having me on. I also wanted to thank the Best Care Anywhere podcast, not only for putting up with me for the last couple of years and having me on as a guest many, many times, which I really, really appreciate because any time I get to talk about my favorite show of all time, MASH, is a pleasure. And Anthony and Ethan have always been welcoming and just great, great friends that I've met through the podcast world. But I want to thank them for creating a community that not only has provided me with guests for my show, but has brought me newfound friendships. And like I just said, it's truly a community that I am so very, very happy to be a part of, and to have found all of these people that not only come on my podcast, but that I really think of as friends. And it's always weird to think of people that you have never met face to face as close friends, but I do think of a lot of these people that I've met through the Best Care Anywhere podcast as some of my closest friends. So I want to thank Anthony and Ethan of Best Care Anywhere for not only inspiring me to do this podcast, but for as I said, for welcoming me with open arms, and for opening up a whole new world of relationships and friendships that I really hold close to my heart. When I started this podcast, I was worried that I wouldn't be able to find guests, that I would run out of subjects. And over the last year, I have made a lot of new friends who, some have come on here. It's been their first podcast experience. And now they're kind of getting the itch to start their own podcast, which is exciting. It's just been really amazing that I've been able to find these new friends, and they're people who I've never met in person, but they're people who I interact with now every day and who I get to talk to on podcast, and they bring me ideas. It's heartening to know that they want to come back on and they have things that they're passionate about. and that they want to share with other people, and they think of me and this show as a way to do that. And it's exciting for me to learn about new things and to experience the joy and passion that pop culture brings to different people. And that's what I wanted this podcast to be. And I hope that's what the listeners are getting out of this. Again, I am on Twitter under Pop Culture Basement, or you can just look for me, Mike Jamison, under This Lightsaber Kills Fascists. I am on Bluesky under Pop Culture Basement and also under This Lightsaber Kills Fascists. We have a Facebook page, Pop Culture Basement. We are now on Instagram under Pop Culture Basement Podcast. So if you want to give us a follow on Instagram, that would be great. And like I keep hammering out there, please share the show. Please comment on the show. Please like the show. And just help us get the word about the Pop Culture Basement Podcast out there. I am very, very excited to get going on season 3. And I am very, very appreciative of all the listeners that have come on board over the past year and listened for the first 2 seasons of the show. And I want to say thank you, and that we will be back soon. So until then, once again, I know Larry David would be mad at me, but Happy New Year to everybody, and we will be back soon with new episodes. Until then, I will talk to you soon, and you know what? I think all of us need a little light in the darkness of kind of what's going on in the world. So if listening to a podcast and escaping for an hour or 2 helps you, I hope that you give us a listen, because I know it helps me. And just doing this podcast helps me take my mind off of some of the more serious things that are going on. So if we could help each other out, that would be great. Until then, I will talk to all of you soon. Bye.